Hey everyone, it's Joe Glines here, and today I'm talking to Mason, who from the forum, AutoHotkey forum. Right? I'm trying to remember actually. Did we just start chatting from? Did I ask a question on a thread? I'm trying to remember how I actually, or was it just we were attending the webinars?
Good question. I'm not sure. I
Been a
did
while.
start
Yeah,
attending webinars. Yeah.
yeah, and thank you right off the bat for. I know you at times you chime in and help out, explain concepts and things, and you led the webinar in classes, right? If I remember right.
Yes.
Which was awesome. And so let's go ahead and get started here and talk about, like, give us a little bit of a background of your education and what you're planning to do. I know you were talking about going back or continuing schooling. Why don't you
hmm
give us an idea of one as your background and school wise or work?
Okay. Well, considering programming, I am completely self-taught, basically. Started when I was about middle school. Just started dabbling in it for no real reason. I was just bored in school.
Yep.
And like the first stuff I started writing was like Batch. Of course, it's the most accessible thing. Um, Somewhere along the line, I wanted to advance that a little bit. I discovered this macro recorder, nothing to do with AHK.
Yeah. Oh, okay.
Yeah, and um, it wasn't enough for me. I wanted more functionality, more options. So
Flexibility. Yeah.
yeah, I had seen AutoIt. I really didn't like the way it looked. Um, and maybe it's just me, but it seems fairly intimidating to start getting into just looking at the syntax. But I found AutoHotkey. The syntax is very simplistic. Going into it, it doesn't seem like it's all that inconsistent. It ends up being that, but it's very easy to get into.
I think that's a great summary of actually both AutoIt. When I look at it, I have a much harder time reading it, and that was one of the reasons why I didn't use it. And with AutoHotkey, spot on. It's so easy and intuitive for a non-programmer. And after time, you start realizing there's inconsistencies or some weirdness to it. But there's weirdness in every language, from my understanding. So,
Yeah, for sure. Um, so
how long ago? I'm curious. Was that like you started actually working with AutoHotkey?
um, that was 11 years ago now. I was 13.
Wow, that's so awesome.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's great. I mean, I'm not sure how I'm thinking it's around 8 years for me, but the first 3 years I was really just using hotkeys and hot strings.
Mm.
But like you, I didn't realize you were self-taught on the programming side of things. Um, I'm still of course learning programming side, but it's the passion for the automation and how much you can do with it. It's crazy, right? With AutoHotkey in specific.
Yeah.
Have you played in other languages?
Oh, absolutely. Since then, I I've done some Visual Basic, realized it was terrible. Visual Basic Script, also not great, but it's okay. Um, Let me think. There's a lot of languages I've done so far.
Mm-hmm.
Professionally, I've done JavaScript, and the trimester I've taken college, I was working almost exclusively in C++.
Oh wow.
So I know all that, and I know a little bit of Java, um, a little bit of Python, but I really don't like the language structure, the syntax.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, the indentation thing bothers me.
Oh, it took me a while. That and also the stupid case sensitive stuff drives me batty because of course we're spoiled and we're not used to that.
Hmm.
But I played with Python for a couple years and I didn't like that indentation and the white space type of thing at first. I also thought only one way to do something was very restrictive. And then I started realizing all these things actually made me a better programmer once I got used to them, except for that case sensitivity or insensitivity, which I would waste hours with something not working because I title cased one and not the other. It was so annoying. But yeah, anyway.
Yeah, that's actually pretty common of a lot of languages, especially C++.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
I think for people who start in a language that's case sensitive, it's much easier to, you just get used to it, right? So you're cognizant of what you're doing. And that is one of the things of using something like, actually, even because Sight doesn't really, you can sort of do it, but Studio auto assist when you're typing variable names. And that is really helpful when, if it was case, I mean, AutoHotkey is not case sensitive, right? But if it were, that really helps when you have a editor that's helping you with that.
Yeah. With AHK, I actually don't like autocomplete. I like to torture myself. I like to make sure that I really get it in my head.
Honestly, so I'm the opposite, right? I use hot strings, and not only that, I build GUIs to dump in snippets of code. And I will be the first to admit that is one of the reasons why I'm not a great programmer, right? Is because I don't have to remember any of it. I can easily pop it up, and I think you're right. By doing it over and over, you get a deeper understanding of it, and of course you memorize it better. Which for me, I'd be lost without my snippets and stuff.
Yeah, well, I think the biggest thing there is you don't plan to do that professionally, so it doesn't really matter. In your stance, that's actually a better option.
Yeah, I'm all about just getting something working fast, right? That's what I'm trying to do. But anyway, yeah, I hear you as far as slamming through the code and making sure you're typing it all out.
Yeah.
I'm curious, can you remember what was like some of the first stuff that you started to automate that you got excited about?
Games, unquestionably.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I think the first thing I remember making was a bot for some website game.
Mm-hmm.
It ultimately got me banned, but since then, I've actually refined that, and I don't really use it on games too much anymore. I use it mostly for remappings.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty much it, just remappings these days. But for some things, I'll still use a couple macros, and you just have to work with the system, and it's not that hard to get around any kind of anti-macro stuff. If you're going full-length bot or you're doing code injection, well, that's more obvious, a lot more obvious.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't do that stuff.
Yeah, just to avoid the issue
Yeah.
I'm curious. So, and actually, you mentioned also you're planning to go back, not back, I guess, continue on with schooling is maybe a better way to phrase it, in computer science. Right?
Yeah. So I have, I think, I don't know, a year and a half's worth of credits. I think around 28 total.
Mm-hmm.
And if I get those transferred, then, about 2 years, I can get my bachelor's.
Cool.
And that would be nice, so I could finally get a job in my field. No one hires without a degree.
Oh, really? Even in programming? I thought, well, yeah, I thought they were a little more lenient if you can demonstrate, that you have the skills that they were up to. But I know I come from the corporate world, and they are sticklers for degrees, and I find it just a bunch of BS because programming, right? You can demonstrate that you can do this. It's so easy. It's not like it's marketing where you're like, well, let me create something and it's not arbitrary, but you can interpret it in different ways. Whereas programming, it's very clear if you can demonstrate quickly, if what you did works or not.
Yeah. The other major thing I think about that is geography. I'm not in a good location for coding. there's zero in my city and surrounding. There's
Yep.
no technical jobs really available.
Yep.
So I would have to either travel or
Yep.
move up there, and that's what makes it difficult to even find those jobs.
Yep. Yeah. In today's day and age where so many people can work remotely, often that's a big deal. I know
Mhm.
when I was working in research over more automations, what I do now, I actually I started at Six Flags in Oklahoma City, and then they first told me they didn't have a job and they wanted me to move, and I let them move me down here to Dallas because Oklahoma City was just such a small city, and I wasn't going to find a job at that level. But it's good to be willing to move around, find a job. And honestly, I've lived around the U.S. a lot. It's great to be able to. Everywhere is different. It's very fun.
Mhm.
I'm curious. Why do you think more people like? Do you have? Do you know anyone else that personal, like close in where you are, that uses AutoHotkey or automates things?
No, actually.
Yeah.
I do have friends that I try to push it on them because they're like, "Oh, that's really cool. I'd like to learn that." I'm like, "Okay, well, let me show you." And then,
Yeah.
yeah,
Trust
doesn't
me.
really happen.
Yeah. It's one of those things from doing these interviews. After talking more and more people, I realized people who are into this are different, right? And we see the benefits of it, and we're willing, of course, to also. Most people, when they say, "Oh yeah, show me," they are expecting like a magic pill, right? Where it's suddenly they can do all this stuff and it's easy. It's like, well, and generally speaking, AutoHotkey is easy, to start
Yeah.
with. But I call it the great things by. It's like, hey, that was really neat. See you later, and then we never pick it up. I can count on one hand how few of people have picked it up from me introducing. I've introduced a lot of people to it. So yeah, I hear you.
Yeah, that's very much the thing. This is so in V2, they had mentioned um, the whole problem with the inconsistencies between expression syntax and traditional syntax.
Yep.
And I agree, and I really want V2 to be purely expression based. However, I think that shouldn't completely deprecate V1 because expression is intimidating to new users.
Yep.
And all of the people who I've ever introduced it to, they're like, yeah, if there was no traditional, I would probably never even
Right.
consider attempting it.
Yeah. The cat's out of the bag, and now that everyone's used to that, making it not do it that way is, it would be hard for getting people, besides of course losing a lot of have to rework stuff. But
Yeah.
yeah, I hear you. I'm still curious if and when we ever will actually switch to V2.
I don't know.
Yeah, we'll see. Right?
He hasn't even decided like half the stuff. It's very inconsistent still. He's still moving stuff around actively, so he could break a script in an update real easy.
Yeah, and I've seen some things backporting some of the functionality, that he was at a little. I mean, for the most part, from talking to like Tank, the stuff in V2, it's not adding like new functionality, like you said. It's fixing some of the weirdness, inconsistencies in the code, but it's not like adding COM, which was a huge jump forward, right? In being able to do stuff. So anyway, I looked at it some, and I still now. Do you normally use V2 or do you stick with L?
No, well, originally I actually started before L was around, so I was on basic.
Sure. Yeah.
But then once basic had like officially dropped support, I moved to L, and then I've been on L ever since.
Yeah, that was basically a little bit before L started. That's right when I started using AutoHotkey. And actually, let me rephrase that. That was when I switched jobs and where I actually was using object-oriented stuff, and I was doing web scraping. And it was right when the forum had both the vanilla version and the L, and holy cow, I didn't know any. The syntax was very different, and I got very confused. But it was a bummer time to start. But it's still now. Like you said, I've been using L forever.
Mm.
What do you think? Like, why don't more people use whether either AutoHotkey or any tool for automating the mundane?
It is simply the fact that a lot of people don't like change. They tend to have their routines, and when you alter that routine, even if it makes it better, they don't necessarily like that. People are very set in their ways.
That's a brilliant way you explain it. I love the way you said, even if it makes it better, and they'll even admit, whether it's actually consciously or subconsciously, right? I think a lot of people go, I can see it. In people hate change. I think you're spot on. And even if you don't hate change, it's just hard to change, right? We have our habits. Yeah. But yeah, that's a brilliant way that you said that of, because what I'm curious is, like, as you learn other languages, do you think you'll just be using AutoHotkey for remapping of keys and such, or do you think it'll depend on what job you're doing and where?
I have so much stuff running. I have script up I made, and that runs like 15 or 16 different scripts for me. And I use those on a very, very regular basis every single day.
Yeah.
So I think I'll always, if I don't add a bunch of new stuff to my HK library, at least that will always be there.
Yeah. I'm the same way. I have my one launching, I'd say about 8, but I have a lot in my main script. It's around 2,000 lines long, and it has just a ton of different things built into the main one. But yeah, it's no matter what, like you said, I'll never probably stop using a lot of those.
Yeah. It's just, it becomes part of your life, part of your habit.
Actually, it gets back to the thing you said a minute ago, right? People hate change, right? Like, well, I got this stuff. It works great, even though there might be something else does a little bit more, which is the other thing, honestly, about AutoHotkey. That's one of the biggest things for me is I can customize it to the way I think. I can actually, I just wrote someone today about Zoom because it did a certain thing. And I said, it really drives me nuts that you guys have these hotkeys, but I can't reassign them. They're just straight up, this is what it is. And Alt is one of them, just Alt. There's no combination of Alt. It's just Alt. And I'm like, how can you take over the Alt key? I mean,
yeah.
How do you, so let's say you're out at a party or whatever, and you meet some new people. How would you explain, what AutoHotkey is and what it does, or how it might help them?
I've never been in this situation before.
You've never been to a party? No, I'm kidding.
I've been to a lot of parties, but
yeah.
Coding usually isn't brought up.
No, yeah, and that's actually for me. I don't bring up coding, right? I'll just bring up, I like to be more efficient, and I realized also for me, it isn't the coding aspect. It's no matter what. I just like to be more organized, do things that are. I hate wasting time, right?
Yeah.
And I use AutoHotkey for that, but that again, that's why I'm not a programmer. I'm much more into productivity and efficiency than I am any one given language. And I also, you probably heard Jackie and I are like, hey, we love AutoHotkey, but we're happy to use other things. I don't really care what tool I'm using.
Mm-hmm. Which I think is great. Something is not related because I still don't have an answer for that really. But the main reason why I code, why I even considered coding in the first place, is because there are all these other tools I could be using, but they're not mine. It's that feeling of creation, like you're being productive, you're doing something, advancing yourself, I guess.
Yep.
And that's what really drives me to program and to continue programming.
I think it's a very critical one. I actually made a video the other day talking about how, you're investing in yourself. I was reading this book talking about people at work and businesses, and being, you should invest in systems, not like a tool, right? And developing capabilities and systems in order to work, and actually that's where I kind of converted it to me for people, is like, that's how I view scripting and automation is, I'm investing in myself, and after I learn X, Y, and Z, I'm even that much more productive, and I have that many more reasons why someone might hire me or give me a raise or whatever. And back to the thing which you alluded to earlier was, I might have a given task, and I could either do the work, right, and let's say it takes an hour, or I can write a script that also might take me an hour to actually write. But one is the joy of actually, like you said, I created something. I also probably learned something along the way. But then the other thing, of course, is 9 out of 10 times the things come back again and again and again, right? And I either get to reuse that script, or I can borrow how some of the subroutines and functions I wrote and repurpose them later, so I don't have such a long development time.
Exactly. And that's why, so when I had first started coding, I think when a lot of people first start coding, they don't understand exactly the purpose of functions or why they should use them rather than just writing it all in a line. Yep. They use it more and more, and they're like, well, I want to keep using this part. So my standard library is enormous.
Honestly, you are the first person I run into who has said that, because I have a large library as well. And it amazes me that most people I talk to don't even use the library. I have
Why not? It's amazing.
Yeah. I'm like, it's so awesome. And that was the other one, which also for me, this is again why I'm not as good of a programmer as I would be if I had actually had a different mindset. But like Jackie, he goes in and he will dissect any function if he finds it in the form, whatever, and he learns it inside out. And then he will go through and pick and choose from it what he wants. So he definitely has a much, much deeper grasp of programming. But at the same time, I don't care, right? I'm just like, it does what I want. I don't want to peek inside. It's very rare. Sometimes I do, but it's very rare. And I'd rather use that time doing something else, right? Let's see. What do you actually? I don't know if I've ever asked, but do you create GUIs?
Yes. I think ScriptUp is a good example of that. The one problem is it's running with H, because all the separate scripts are running as threads rather than processes. And the biggest problem with that is you can't relay information, as far as I know. I haven't found a proper way to do it, from a child thread back to the main thread that owns the GUI. And so that gets a little messy. You kind of have to butcher it a little bit. I have something that is like kind of constantly checking for it. Mm-hmm. And it just pulls information from those threads. So it's not the best. I do wish that multi-threading was implemented appropriately. That would be a lot better, with some like shared memory stacks. Would be great.
See, that stuff is over my head. Having said that, the one thing when I used Python that I was envious of that I can't do the same way in AutoHotkey was I was doing web scraping, and I would go out and get, like, let's say 1,000 different ticker values, and it used multi-threading, and go out, and it didn't wait for one to finish and do the next one and the next one, and it did it all so much faster. It was amazing. And so I understood, I grasped the big benefits of it. But again, I don't actually play in that space as far as the managing of memory and understanding those things. Did you attend the webinar where Jean Lalonde was talking about, but I think it was between scripts, sharing, values and things between scripts?
Was that using H or using L?
No, it was using L.
I believe that method is using messages, correct?
I believe so. It's been a while. And yeah, I just knew, I didn't think that would solve your issue, but
No, unfortunately not.
yeah, yeah, um, yeah. That all those things, right? They get to be, again, to me, if I was a programmer, I would spend more time on them. But
Yeah. There are three ways to share between between scripts. There's messages, then you can create a
yeah,
interface,
yep,
and then you can use a file. I always avoid using files for that purpose because it's intrinsically slower.
mm-hmm. Sure, absolutely,
Write cycles.
yeah.
You want to extend your hard drive as long as you can, you know.
Yeah, another one which I think is slightly different is you can create an environmental variable in the registry.
That too.
And yeah, that's I think slightly different, right? But it's if I remember correctly, it's pretty damn fast.
It is very fast, though I wouldn't recommend it unless someone knows that it's there and it's like
Sure.
out of the way and nothing else is trying to use it.
Yeah.
Gotta be careful with that one.
Yeah. The other one, which isn't really one, but is at least you can pass. You can pass something from one script to the other on the launch, right? In your command of it, pass it a parameter. But that I know that's not what you're talking about. But yeah, fun stuff. And another one which I wouldn't. Someone else was showing me that what they did is they were using GUIs and they were actually using control get and control set on the GUI, with the other script. And it anyway, it was like, oh, that's interesting.
You can do that, but there are limitations, especially if you're trying to post images. Then it gets a little more complicated.
Cool. So what are your plans like? So you're gonna go get after you graduate with your consumer science degree. Actually, do you have a specific interest in any certain language you're gonna focus on?
No, actually, I kind of want to be a guy that can know 6 or 7 languages. I basically, when I had done JavaScript professionally, I had never touched JavaScript I had, but not in that level. And I essentially learned it in about a month and a half. I feel like learning languages is almost a little more fun than being professional with them. So that works for me because I can have this huge skill set and I can get a job doing whatever they want.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know. I'll put you on the spot here. I should have asked you earlier, but do you have any, and you don't have to show them, or especially you don't have to show the code if you don't want to, but do you have any examples that you can either talk to or share on the screen in showing some of the, like you mentioned, I think you said it had like roughly a dozen that get launched automatically. Is there any examples I love these calls because one of the big reasons is when people see how someone else has used AutoHotkey for doing things, we all use it so differently, right? So if you have anything that you think would be interesting for people to see, or again, just to talk to, explain it, be great.
Yeah, nothing I can show that I haven't already shown. Either
it seems like no one here has ever seen anything because it'll, we'll have different groups of people watch the different things.
True. I do have a lot of this stuff on my library.
Okay.
People can find that either on my GitHub or there is a thread on the forums for that. I do have a couple interesting ones here. I have basic ones like I always have an auto clicker. I have extra buttons on my mouse so I can set those so I can still do everything normally.
Yeah.
I have a script that keeps things always on top and it modifies the header so that it's on top. And
the header meaning the title?
Yes, just the title.
Thank you. Yeah.
Some of my more interesting ones, I have the only one I have running under the AHK Mini DLL is a process watcher. So there's 4 or 5 different windows I have that it checks. And if they exist, it'll close them, either forcibly or however it feels like it needs to close it.
Yeah.
Like TeamViewer. Since I'm using the free version, you sometimes after you're out of a session, it'll pop up this window saying, thanks for TeamViewer. And I have it closing that. Like Uplay opens up some extra windows after you close a game, which is annoying. I have it closing that. I do have some macros hanging out in there for a couple of games, mostly my rebinds. I also have a entire input blocker. It has one hotkey to turn on and off, and when you turn it on, you can't interact with the mouse, can't interact with any of the buttons, stuff like that, in case there are kids around or you're trying to clean it.
Yeah. I have 2 that are like that. One of them, when my son was younger, actually what it did was it did what you described to start, but then it opened Word at size like 80 font or something. And then when you'd hit a letter, it would say the letter. It would say it out loud. And I called it my toddler keyboard, right? So it was helping him, learn the letters. But the second one, which is closer to what you're describing, is I can hit my, a key combo and it kills the feeds to my monitor as well as everything except for my unlock key. And basically, when you work in a corporate environment, if you, like where I worked, if you walked away and left your screens up, security, if they came by, they'd write you up, right? So you had to lock it, but then you had these crazy ass passwords to unlock it. So I had an AutoHotkey thing. I could hit a button and it just killed everything. And when I came back, I could hit another one and I didn't have to type in my password. Everything comes back up. It was awesome. It's the simplest thing, but it's one of those you go, oh man, that's nice.
Yeah, that was my one problem though, was the lack of security. So I don't think I ever finished it. I did basically create a custom lock screen that just goes over everything. It does have a password that you can set, pretty minor. It's just it does use all the encryption. So because if I'm doing anything security related, I'm going to be using encryption. So it hashes the password and it's just comparing against the hash rather than saving the password in plain text. A little back on topic, or did you have something?
No, I was going to say I'm really lazy, but I have my password saved. I hashed them sort of. Someone could crack it easily. But what I was going to say was I put mine, because everything else is in Dropbox, but I put those outside of Dropbox, and that way if someone gets all my files, they don't have my passwords, right? And even then they're sort of encrypted. But yeah, it's someone could hack mine in a heartbeat if they knew what they were doing. Anyway, go ahead.
I prefer LastPass for that, and I do recommend that rather than people putting their passwords in HA.
Yeah.
Let's see. Yeah, so I do have basic hot string stuff. I don't have a lot of hot strings, a couple of replacements. Mostly stuff like I can go to Discord and hit, I think it's Control D, and it'll pop up a window with all the text styles that you can use.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
Yeah, just as a reference, because I always forget, and then I always have to look them up.
Right.
So I just have that right there for me. I do have something very similar to what you had posted a long time ago now with the print screen and the floating windows and everything.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Incredibly similar. Yeah.
It's so useful. Yeah.
It is. And I am recently working on something. I'm probably going to live stream this because I was asked to on the Discord. So I have the floating windows and all that. But something that had occurred to me that would be really, really helpful is if you took a floating screenshot, window specific, but it was a live video.
Yeah. Oh, cool.
So basically it'll keep grabbing those from the window. GDI Plus can do that fairly easily.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to...
Are you going to... Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just trying to make it... Well, I'm trying to think about it before I make it because they want me to make it live. but I've just been racking my brain the just the most efficient way I can make that, because I'm really worried I'm not going to get more than like 20, 15 or 20 frames a second, which is going to be a little slow.
Right, right. I I I and I'm trying to remember. I think it was Rick C. who I interviewed. He happens to be here in Dallas, but anyway, I adapted. He had one where he had a hotkey, and I forget exactly what it did, but I borrowed from it. Where mine fires up FFmpeg and grabs the active window. So I can hit a hotkey and basically I start recording video, like that. But I don't pick and choose. It's just my main window, and then and that's it. But I did like that one. It is great to be able to hit a hotkey and just start recording instantly, and instead of having to find something and launch it later.
Yeah, I didn't consider using FFmpeg. That's actually a pretty good idea.
The other one I did, this is where his was I forget. I took his concept, borrowed, and then tweaked it a little bit. But then the second thing I did to it was, after it's done recording, it says, "Would you like to take this video and convert it to an animated GIF?" And since I already have the path to the file, it was just like, hey, you know what? This is nice, because what if I wanted an animated GIF instead of the video? I have it built into it. So I may not know ahead of time which one I want. So I just did it that way.
That's pretty cool. Yeah, I would not be able to do that with the way I'm going with it, unless I saved all the images and then.
Yeah, right. Yeah, I can't imagine doing what you're describing without just using a tool. The only other one I had thought about was because LiceCap does the animated GIFs really well, and it's a standalone program. But I had thought what would have been nice possibly is when I hit record to have it allow me to drag my mouse and to do the rectangle I want to record.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm sure could easily be done. For me, it was more about the speed of I just need to record something now, and so I did.
That is exactly what I'm going with here. Yep. Is a click and drag on a very specific region.
Yep.
So I could basically duplicate that function and then use FFmpeg to actually make a video to save.
Mm-hmm.
That could be another project.
Yeah. And FFmpeg is just insane how much you can easily do with it. Actually, I thought about it this morning. So, and I already have a program that does this. It just doesn't. I'll tell you. I listen to a lot of audiobooks. Ironically now, or not, whatever. I only drive 3 minutes away, twice a day to pick up and drop off my son. So I'm not in the car long enough to even get through a 10-minute segment. And so every time I get in here, I'm playing it on an MP3 player, and it keeps starting over and over because I never get through it. So I have a program that I can say, hey, take this file and convert it to 3-minute chunks or whatever time period I want, right? Or do it by file size or whatever. And so I split up all my MP3 files, but I have to pick one file at a time. I have to say, take this file, split it up into 3-minute chunks. Now take the next file, split up 3-minute chunks. And I'm like, I might write a script to say, get a list of these files and then split them into 3-minute chunks. I figured, because I've used FFmpeg for extracting the audio from video, I think, be able to, and I've trimmed, time with it as well off of audio. Mm-hmm. That I could probably pretty easily write a script to do this across multiple files, and so I think I might do. I just don't do it that often, so it's one of those things well, is it really worth my time? Because it's one of those things when you think about it, we get so busy with stuff, right? And you're like, well, even I don't even know if anyone else is going to use it, and so I just don't know if it's worth the time.
It is very specific. And yeah, I'm not sure if that's globally usable, but yeah, I make stuff that's a one-time use all the time.
Yeah,
I'll make it and I'm like, hey, this will be cool, and then never use it again.
Have you done this yet? Have you said, hey, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna make this, and then you make it, and then when you actually go to save it, you realize you'd already made it before. Because I've done that like twice now, where I'm like, oh, you know what? I should have thought of this a long time ago. And I don't actually save the file where I would think to go look for it. And then when I finally am done, I'm like, oh, let me move this to where I'll know where it is. And, there's some swearing involved. And I'm like, I freaking, I did this already.
I don't think I have. I keep everything very, very organized. And
so do I.
Yeah.
I just sometimes when I get in the moment, I don't start in that directory, right? And that's my downfall is if I had just, because I'm the same way. I am very highly organized, but I get excited sometimes and I don't actually start there, which would take care of it. But
No, I understand that. I've definitely rewritten the same thing a bunch of times, either to make it better or because I couldn't get to it. It was on a different computer or something.
Yeah. Yeah. I rarely go back just and it's not optimization, because if I realize there's a much faster way that it'll run if I fix it, then I will update that. But let's say you were like, my knowledge of the DOM with web scraping compared to when I started is, far superior now than what it was. If my original script worked and it didn't cause any speed delay, and even though I find a new way to grab things, I don't go back and update it. I just don't care. It works. So I don't revisit it. But yeah.
That's fair. I love coding, so I will go and I will optimize it. My auto clicker that I have always running, I've rewritten it I think 6 times now.
Yeah. What I'm curious, I don't know if you can show it or just talk to it. How is it how are you I assume it's looking for like an image and then we'll click it if it's found?
The auto clicker is just simply like I'll hold my X button 1 and then hold left click and it'll just left click in place, but I can move it around still. So it's very kind of just where I'm at. I can also do that with the right button. And that's pretty much all it is, but I also made it to where I can hold the X1 button and hold or press page up, page down to actually switch the speed.
Oh, interesting.
Which I didn't, that was only my newest version. And that's because I had need for it. Some games, like some whatever games on the internet, just in the browser, they don't register that fast. So you have to slow it down to actually make it more efficient. I think that's all.
Is it clicky do?
No. That I made for it just because I made, people are always asking for auto clickers. I don't think that got any attention at all, but it's extremely simple to use. You can use any of the send methods just by selecting a radio. You can set the time for it, and there's an easy on-off key for it. There's also a freeze key option, so that while it's active, it'll freeze the mouse in place. It'll just disable movement. I don't think people really liked it, but it's there.
It's one is, to me, it's annoying. You said earlier how people always want, the auto clicking type thing. And I'm like, AutoHotkey does so much more. And yet people are like, dude, you should make videos on doing, things and doing stuff with games, because it'll get a lot of views. I'm like, that's great, but that's not why I don't want to teach people how to automate games, right? I want to teach them. I don't have a problem with it. I'm just saying, like, I want to teach people how to be more efficient and productive. Like, if they're playing a game, that's not, they could speed up things so they're faster, but it's not going to, either make them more money or free up their life. They're doing stuff that's to them fun. So I don't really care about it. But it's just funny to me that people get really into that auto clicking stuff, and AutoHotkey has so much more to it. Yet it's one of the biggest in. Like you said, you started right. You playing video games and
Yeah, that's definitely like the original hook. I'm on the Discord pretty much all the time,
yeah.
and that's like the number one question to ask is how can I auto click? How can I cheat at this game? So
Yeah.
they actually banned cheating on the Discord because they're not fans.
I saw I'm almost never on Discord. I don't know. I can't explain why. I don't know why. I just.
I'm assuming you don't game a whole lot.
Oh, I don't. No.
That's kind of why it's mostly used for that. That's what I use it for when I'm trying to talk to people while I'm in a game. Not really the AHK Discord. That's just when I get bored. It's kind of like Slack.
Uh-huh. Cool. Anything else you want to discuss? Any thoughts on where automation's going and hopefully if it'll be any predictions on hopefully at someday people starting to care more about it?
I mean, it's definitely getting bigger and it's getting better. I think the problem right now is the community is getting bored with what they can automate. So they're coming up with these things that have almost nothing to do with automation. Like someone had said, well, let's make an IRC type client in AHK. Sure, you can do that, but it's not going to be very good. It's not what AHK is meant for. It's not automating anything. And so I'm not really sure. There'll always be things people can automate, but people like me who have been around a long time, we're getting a little bored as to like what we can make. So we're kind of going a little far-fetched, like making a floating video of a window.
It's so funny. Yeah. Yeah. But I think that's the other thing I noticed with the people that I've spoken to an interview with is that it's fun to a lot of most people, like even if you're not going to use a lot, just solving a problem and doing something, the journey is what you actually are enjoying. I mean, I can't tell you how many things I've written that after I wrote it, I'm like, hey, I could probably sell this, but like I'd have to put together a web page and do all the stuff. And I'm like, yeah, I don't really care.
Yeah. Anything I make in AHK is free reign unless someone commissions me for it, which I've definitely had that done more than a couple times.
Yeah. Awesome. That so it's good to know, and for anyone else knowing too. So do you don't mind people approaching you for saying, hey, I want X, I need something that does X, and they're willing to pay?
Of course not. I'm fairly lenient on ethics because money,
Right.
But if it's anything that is like obviously illegal or against something's policy in a very strict way that I could get in trouble, I absolutely will not be doing that.
Yeah. Good for you. Yeah. And nor should you, right? And nor should any of us. Yeah.
Right.
I'll do a little for myself on LinkedIn, but that, it's against some of the but I'm not actually building databases and doing this stuff with it, right? I'm just automating some other stuff that everyone does manually, like writing people a message, an introductory message. I'm like, whether I'm copying it and pasting it from Word, which technically would be okay with their what do you call it? Policies, but I'll just level it up a little bit. But yeah, I hear you.
Mm-hmm.
I'm curious, without getting into any specific details on money, do you usually like bid by the hour, or do you say like, what's it worth to you? And I'll just give you, here's a ballpark price of what we're going to agree on.
That really depends on the size of the project. If it's something fairly minor, I'll be like, hey, okay, something like, just give me $20 and I'll give you all the frills and everything because it won't take me that long.
Right.
If it's like something that's going to take a long time with a lot of testing, probably more of an hourly thing. Yeah.
Cool. Yeah. I generally speaking, almost never do stuff by the hour. I find it, I don't want to say repulsive, but I'm like, look, I've spent years, and I know you have too, to build up my library and do all this stuff. And they'll balk at, like, if you mention a price tag per hour, and yet they have no idea how long you're going to take to write the damn thing, you know?
Yeah.
Like, anyway, it's silly to me because some things I can do with web scraping, I can do very quickly. And yeah, I want to get paid for my knowledge base, and what should they care, right? What's it worth to you is what it should really be. But yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks for coming on here. Thanks again for helping out with that one webinar. That was awesome. Maybe we'll get you at some point to do another one, but this is great and good. Best of luck with the school stuff. Keep at it.
Yeah, that'll be good.
I'm a big not activist, but believer in furthering education. Thankfully, you're actually getting an education, something that will actually pay you as well, which is always nice.
Yes.
All right, man. Well, thanks for coming on.
See ya.
Bye.